Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural podcast of the Start the Snowball.com podcast. I'm here with my friend and ally and ruthless marketer, Brad Osborne. And my name is Cory Miller. And we're excited, Brad. We've been talking about this for a while because we were basically recording our conversations
Yeah.
and posting them because we think there's good stuff here for other entrepreneurs. But would you tell everybody else what we've been talking about? What is this podcast really all about, and who is it for?
Well, we want this to be a really fun place for entrepreneurs and other creators who are looking to do something special in the world. And um, you you talked about your mindset of the snowball, thinking about the snowball. So we'll talk about that on this episode. But basically, no matter what you're trying to do in life, if you want to create something in the world, you're going to have to go through a process of growth. And sometimes that process is exciting and sometimes it's challenging. And we want to talk about the whole thing. We also want to share some creative projects with the listeners and viewers of this show, just to show that we both love creating things. I think a lot of entrepreneurs love to create. I've kind of learned this term recently of maker that is pretty popular in the tech world, and it fits. It's just like we're people who like to who who see possibilities and see things that don't exist yet that could exist, and we want to make this place a home for anyone out there who wants to create things. And we want to share the best strategies, resources, the books we've read, and meet some interesting people who are up to creating cool stuff in the world, and share all of our wins and losses and lessons.
And it's really in our philosophy too of instead of ready, aim, fire, we're like, we talked about it. Now fire, 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 fire.
Yeah.
Which we love. And that's part of our philosophy that's so similar between the two of us is just get something out that's good enough. And one, we really base this on what are we passionate about and very interested in talking about. And it's always between us, it's always business and marketing and helping other people. And, I remember my journey started in my like early 30s, my actual full-time entrepreneurial journey. But I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was in high school and saw both my grandfathers who ran small businesses. By the way, they would never call themselves entrepreneurs.
Mm.
Um, and they one had a motorcycle dealership and the other one had a bait and basically like fishing supply store, the minnows and worms. And I was like, this is so cool. At one point, they had all of their kids, which is like 8 in total, working for them. And I was like, this is a cool life. But when I scale back, I'm like, when I just got started, I was trying to learn and I was so eager to just do this cool thing called entrepreneurship. And part of my heart for this, and I know it's yours too, is just imparting that,
Yeah.
imparting what we've learned and mistakes along the way. And then also, like you were saying, we approach business as a laboratory. So here's our ongoing experiments, and not all of them will win. Not all of them will be high fives. Most of them, it's like baseball for me. Most of them will actually die or be zombies and just kind of keep living.
Yeah. But I would guess you find this to be true too. Is um, I remember when I read Mastery by Robert Greene, one of the things that really stuck with me from that book was he talked about artifacts. Like he was talking about how all of these things you do earlier in your career or in your life, they might feel like they die out or they become zombies, but 3 years later, once you start this new thing, suddenly that year you spent learning about coding or learning about design, that you think, why did I do that? That was a waste of my life. Like I spent a whole year learning, design stuff. And here I am now. I started a new job as a marketer, and design has nothing to do with it. Well, fast forward that a couple more years and suddenly a project comes to you, or a business idea, or you meet somebody, or you need to hire somebody on your team, and suddenly that year you spent learning design comes into play. So Robert Greene was talking about how all these things you're trying as part of the snowball process, or I love, you just said this too. You use the term sawdust, like the things that are byproducts of your creative ventures. Sometimes you don't know where they're going to be useful to you. It might be farther down the road, or it could be next week, but that's something that happens too when you're creating new things all the time, is the byproducts of those things that might feel like you're just going down a rabbit hole or you wasted time or whatever.
Well,
They
this is a
become,
sawdust project.
yeah.
This is us, you and I working on projects together, and separately too, but sharing that. And we wanted a venue and outlet to do that. So I love that you brought the sawdust equation back in there. And so I've been talking about purchasing my hometown newspaper, the one I grew up with. And when you're talking about mastery and artifacts and everything, I almost got chills because I'm getting deja vu here, by the way. Is that I started my professional career, I started working when I was 16 formally, meaning you paid taxes. Uh, but I wanted to be a newspaper journalist. And you're considerably younger than me, but like newspapers were these things that had the big fold thing, and you could do it, you search the pages and all that kind of stuff. But like that career is an artifact for me because everything I do, and that you'll see this too, everything I do is informed by being a newspaper journalist. I love deadlines. I love shipping stuff, publishing things. So much of my professional and entrepreneurial career from 2008 to 2018 roughly was building a software company, and I infused all of the values of journalism from that previous career. And it goes with me everywhere I go. As I always think about publishing. So I really love the fact that everything, basically what I got from what you were saying is everything is useful and everything will somehow probably connect.
When they connect, you'll see it. But until then, it can feel frustrating, like you've wasted time or you went down the wrong path. At least for me, I'm about to turn 35 in a couple weeks. So for me, a lot of my 20s was just spent being, which now I know is quite common, just being like, what am I doing? I had these dreams of being an entrepreneur, and I started my first business when I was still in college, but then I didn't really know how to learn. So, for example, one thing I always like to think about is I was running Google and Facebook ads in like 2009 or something for my first business, and I made sales of a digital product from Facebook ads. Nobody was running Facebook ads. Nobody even knew that existed. But my hurdle back then was I didn't know that I could learn things. I know this sounds crazy, and I was a college grad. But what I mean is I didn't understand that I could learn things myself without that like structure. And okay, well, we'll talk about this a lot, I think, as a recurring theme, but the growth mindset, I didn't have the growth mindset. I had the fixed mindset. So I thought things had to do with your talent, your natural abilities, your circumstance, your family, etc. And so I was like, well, I'm not smart enough to figure out this Facebook ad stuff. I didn't know you could just go literally buy a book or take a course. I just didn't know. I didn't know you could go to Google and type how to do Facebook ads. So I think I spent like $100, which at the time, I was like 22, 23, whatever. That was a huge investment. That was like a whole weekend's worth of partying. But I spent like $100 on Facebook ads, and we were selling this ebook about Magic the Gathering. And I made a sale. I made a sale for like $30, but I didn't know what to do after that. And I was like, well, I can't keep spending money, when really I was like sitting on top of this massive gold mine. I could have had my first successful like business back then, but I just didn't know where to go after that. After I tried something and it didn't instantly work and make me a millionaire, I didn't know what to do. So I didn't have the growth mindset, the short form.
And so we've talked a lot about growth mindset personally, but for everybody listening, so growth mindset is a book called, I think, Mindset by Carol Dweck. We'll put these in the show notes on the site. So the two mindsets are fixed, what she discovered with, I think, children, basically school age children. They either had a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And most of us, I think, would say we probably default here to the fixed and learn over time, or have an environment that's really the growth. Fixed is just like you're saying, like my intelligence is fixed. You know, back when I was in school, they had this program called Gifted and Talented. It was all about IQ. My IQ for that specific test wasn't high enough to get in gifted and talented. And I thought, oh, just like you were saying, that's my intelligence level. I'm just not going to be as smart as everybody. We've since found out that's intelligence, actual intelligence, way more than that. So fixed is, this is as good as I am and I can't get better. It's all fixed. And growth is ever evolving. So, and you'll see how over time this plays into our projects. Everything Brad and I do and everything we talk about here is no, it is not. Failure is this big, harsh, negative word for most of us. Failure in the growth mindset is every life in the world, and specifically with the snowball we're talking about here is business, is all of an experiment to learn and grow, to do something better, to iterate on that knowledge and to make it better and better. So like so much of my work, you've seen this too, and you felt it, Brad, it's never linear. Like it's never a straight line. It's always a curvy zigzag like thing. And you end up over here. You know, my previous business that I mentioned, when we sold, we were acquired in 2018. We were doing backups and security and maintenance for WordPress websites. And I had to stop at one point and go, 10 years ago, if somebody had said, Cory, come back from the future, Cory, you're going to be doing this, this, this. I said, I know nothing about those things. And they're not sexy.
Yeah.
And that doesn't interest me. But through this winding squiggle thing, I ended up there, and it feels like serendipity. I'm curious your thoughts too. Like idealism is like straight line to somewhere, but it's always a squiggly line. And then back to the growth mindset, which is, I know we're both curious learners always. Brad, I think as an entrepreneur, that's how you have to be. Otherwise you're going to ride this roller coaster and you're going to throw up and want to get off. What do you think?
Yeah. And interestingly, you kind of, unless somebody reaches you with the message of the growth mindset, you have to discover that by learning or by failing and learning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that first business as a failure because it never made me much money, or made me or my friends that started it with me never made us much money. But it's always what I go back to. Whenever I learn something new in marketing, I go, like, I've been learning SEO the last year. And I was like, wow, we were doing it right back in 2009. We had a blog on WordPress. We were building like a Facebook group on Facebook. This is before a lot of people were doing any of this stuff, because I was super interested in tech. I loved, that was like the new cool thing for me. So I was like, let's try this Twitter thing, let's have a Twitter. And my friends were like, okay, sure. Or we were doing podcasting back in 2009, 2010 for Magic the Gathering, which, if you don't know, is a trading card game. That's super fun. But so we were doing a podcast back in 2009. Nobody even knew what a podcast was. And so now, as I learn more and more, I just go, oh, we had it right the whole time. We were passionate. We loved the product, But what I didn't have then was the growth mindset. And so, but I've had to learn it over time. I kept hitting the same walls of, I keep getting taken out of these projects because my self-doubt creeps in, imposter syndrome comes in. I get intimidated by comparing myself to others. So eventually it's like all of these creative projects can and will work, but there's one thing stopping all of them, which is you're getting blocked by having the fixed mindset. So I forget what your original question was, but
there's so much here that I'm wanting to like take and move in us in that squiggle direction too. And I want to come back to, but when we talk about the start the snowball and what that is all about, it is for me, and this is why it's so aligned with the growth mindset too, but the snowball, and we've got a graphic, we'll put it in the show notes too, or you'll see on the site, is the snowball in business, specifically applied to business, is that most of our entrepreneurial journey, when we start a business, just like your Facebook ads and Google ads back in the day, it's if you've ever physically tried to get a snowball, and I know it might even be snowing in Michigan where you're at today, but like clump it together, okay, and then take it and start to roll it. It takes so much effort. And so I think for sure, snowball, like building a business, launching a business, is building a snowball going uphill. Now, the point of startups and building businesses and everything is that most people will quit in the uphill slog because it's a slog. You get excited, you do something, you start building the snowball, and the snowball is 1 unit of effort equals 1 unit of, result. It's not exponential, it's additive. It's just one. It's my time and effort and all this money perhaps too. And it's this slog going up the hill. That's where most people quit. That's where people's businesses fail too. But this concept of the snowball is that when you get a snowball going, like I saw in my software business, it starts to have exponential momentum coming down. So we talk about the momentum of the snowball, that really is a great example in parallel to how business and starting businesses is. And I think reflective, but it's also this mindset of like, you do the hard effort of anything, a new habit or transformation. I know from your side that you've talked about, it's the growth mindset of like, everything is for that multiplication of effort downstream. So I want to make sure we at least covered for a second the snowball before I started segueing this into all these things. But from your perspective, Brad, what thoughts do you have about the snowball and momentum and building businesses, starting businesses, and the like?
I would say this is going to be a really fun journey for me because we are at different stages, not just of life, but of entrepreneurship and business. And I feel like, we both want to learn from each other, and we both want to learn from whoever else we, have on the podcast. But one thing I can say personally, I don't know if I've experienced the downward momentum. Well, not downward in a bad way, but if you see the graphic, you'll see.
Yeah.
Once you hit that point of momentum where you almost like can't stop this thing from, there you go.
I'm really showing cool. It for those on the video side of it, but we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. I don't know if I've experienced that in business yet for myself, but I've been there for a couple of the companies that I worked for in their marketing departments. I saw that happen. So I've been really close to that. So I'm curious to see like if you're able to see that with me or something. Yeah. So I've heard a lot of my friends have explained the point where their business starts to just take off, and again, I saw that, one business I was in, we deployed one marketing strategy and we were just kind of like barely making any sales every day. And literally the next day it was like an amount of money. I coming from where I came from, really tiny town in Michigan, no entrepreneurial, like I never knew anybody who ran a business. The most successful people in my town are farmers. They run businesses, but pretty much everybody else works like blue collar type jobs. So the amount of money I saw in the account for the company I was working for that happened after we deployed this strategy was absurd to me. It was just wild. And so I've seen the other side of the snowball momentum, but I've never experienced it myself, if that makes sense.
I would say you're being way, way too humble.
Okay.
You have pushed the snowball itself, even if you weren't an owner of the business. You pushed it, you helped the momentum. And just what you said, that to me is the snowball, where there was infrastructure, there was brand, there was team, there was processes and stuff. This little laboratory, the snowball laboratory. Yeah. And then you were pushing that snowball up the hill, and then you were pushing it even, you probably applied same or equal hard work to keep pushing it down the hill to see that exponential hockey curve type thing. So you've been through it. You're just being humble, and
That's true.
we love humble people.
Yeah.
So, but I get to brag on my friends. So I would say you've totally been a part of it, and we all know and want to get there. And that's the holy grail for me, is getting to the tipping point of a business. And I've got a couple startup like projects that are months, in the making. I've got one that's a year old now almost, that is on hog. Like the snowball just started going downhill almost automatically, and it's crazy. But that is where we're talking about when we talk about the snowball. Start the snowball. Get your snowball rolling up the hill. This can apply, and we, in the future we'll probably segue into some of these topics too. But to your actual career, to your life, that there's ways to build these aspects of momentum. Way to diversify your career. Way to diversify your portfolio too. Which I look at myself now, Brad, is a portfolio entrepreneur. Like that's the best way I know how to describe it. People ask me what I do, and I'm like, I don't know. My wife Lindsay gets so mad. She's like, really? You can't tell people what you do. And I'm like, well, I've got like 6-7 projects spinning, 6-7 snowballs going. So am I the VitaBars.com silent partner, helper, supporter? Am I poststatus.com partner? All that kind of stuff. And but it's all about the snowball. And I love building snowballs. And you mentioned something like, I think you're hinting on the video game aspect of this. I want to throw something at you. Yesterday, I was coming into this office and I was like, this is my den. This is my video gamer. And by the way, I'm not a huge gamer, but like I get it and I'm there and I do obsess over actual video games, but business is the best video game ever invented for me. And when I walked in here, I thought, this is my arcade of affirmation, Brad.
Ooh.
But we love talking about business. We love doing this stuff. It's fun for you too. You get, all kinds of affirmation, rewards, and financial things from being an entrepreneur, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so challenging that it constantly asks you to be creative. And that I didn't know. A lot of the training I've had or books I've read, they talk about just like mastering one skill, and that just never felt like fulfilling to me because my curiosity is so intense. I mean, I was just sharing how I watched some videos, informational videos at like 3x, 3 times speed, and it just was absurd to my partner. Like it made no sense. But to me, it's like, yeah, I love learning stuff. I'll learn about anything. I just love
Yeah.
learning, and I think entrepreneurship is that forever, right? It's just you're always being asked to be creative because there are no limits on what you can do. And
It's what the job requires too. Like being a
yeah,
jack of all trades, a generalist versus a specialist, or society, I think culture wants us to be specialized. But you and I have discussed this. I've had a different job on average up until I started my business in 2008. Every 2 years, I had a different job. In that meantime, the entire time since I was 16, my parents have had like 2, 3 jobs, like two, maybe, stuck with companies for a decade, or more, until I found this thing called entrepreneurship, where the job changes every day. And I want to bring this up, Brad, because there are so many people, I've done it, you've done it, that go, this is something wrong with me. I can't stay in one place at one time. I
yes,
can't just focus on one thing at a
yes.
time. And one of the best careers you could ever have, if you're that type, is to consider. I'm not saying to go do it, but consider, test the waters with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I love how you address that, because one pitfall I've fallen into in the past is thinking that entrepreneurship is for everybody, because it sure isn't. And but if you do feel that, where that kind of thing sounds, because to some people that's their nightmare, right? Like having to constantly come up with new things and think about new things and learn new skills, that just sounds awful to a lot of people. And I finally accepted that. That's okay. We're not all put here to do the same kinds of things. And this is my beliefs anyways. I'm not sure what you feel, but um yeah.
This is a weird occupation. I tell people all the time, when I was growing my startup business, my parents didn't know what I did. And my mom worked with me for 6 years. So it was a running joke, but I was like, my parents, and this is nothing negative. They chose different paths occupationally than I did. I found a thing that suited me. Now there might be
Yes.
other career paths that suit me, but this one, journalism was my first one and it suited me because I could literally have any occupation because I could go interview and talk to people and scratch the curiosity thing and live. If I'm interviewing a firefighter, live for that moment as a firefighter.
Mm,
I could go over here, talk to a politician, live that moment as a firefighter. But it's so misunderstood. And those of us, some of us in the population that, just don't focus on one thing, can't focus, can't keep a job, or, we might get this rap. Like I know a couple of people actually that aren't entrepreneurs that have basically a career carousel. It's every 2 years, every 1 year or so. And I think to myself, I hope at some point they find something that's fulfilling. But if not, if the merry-go-round is okay, then keep on it. But I can't help but think, I wonder if that sometime find entrepreneurship. So it was 10 years for me starting, growing my multi-million-dollar software business. It changed every single day. I had 500 careers in that because
yeah.
I had to always learn
Right.
something new.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that, one reason I'm excited to be working with you and to be starting projects with you is that you do care about a word that you said is fulfillment. You know, I don't think either of us are at least any longer under the illusion that some arbitrary number of success or wealth or money or whatever is suddenly going to make you feel fulfilled and happy. So we want to speak about all of that too. I know both of us are involved in helping, the message of mental health be
Absolutely.
forwarded. And I think the entrepreneurial community is one of the groups that needs to hear it the most, to be honest. Some of the things I've experienced in the last couple of years for myself, I think I think we're due for an update in our conversations about entrepreneurship and being a creator, and also looking for things like fulfillment and happiness. And you know so I'm super excited to talk about those things with you because i I had a preconception that working for someone or with someone um, just meant that it just meant a lot of unhealthy things. And you've helped me to um, realize that there is a world in which we can enjoy the job or the life path of entrepreneurship without all of these like weird, unrealistic, unhealthy expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's this job is, to your point about mental health, is hazardous to your mental health and your physical health. And I'm testament to it. I do talk publicly a lot about my mental health and struggles with it. It was after I had a measure of success and I wanted everybody to know, and we'll be doing this on this podcast, is like, we're not going to sell you a veneer of something that's not true.
mm-hmm.
We'll say we failed. There are
Yeah.
plenty of podcasts you can find that like they're never going to fail publicly on the podcast. I don't think that's how we're wired here because that's real to life.
Yeah.
You may think there's this saying, and I always butcher it: born on third base, but think you hit a home run. So you think you get up and you're like, boom, hit it out of the park. You don't realize actually you started all the way like one plate to home base, and that's so true for most of us. It's like you said, all these artifacts we collect over the years too add to our measure of success.
Mm.
But I want to come back real quick to this. When I say like you and I and others, many others we know that have like job hopping and stuff, I want to say maybe you're a snowball builder.
Yeah.
Maybe you're part of the community we're starting here. Maybe you're eager to test this out and test the waters. This is your home for that. And snowball for me too, you and I love this term, recurring revenue. There's also the aspect of we want to build cash machines. Now, I believe you start and grow businesses for purpose first and profit. They're mutual, they're both. You have to have both. And most people do just profit. And that's where we see these skewed and terrible abuses going on. And let's say the stock market type companies, Fortune 500, all that kind of stuff, is they just think about the profit and they forget about the purpose. It works better with purpose and profit. But when you can build a purpose and profit snowball, a cash machine, that's where we're getting at. We'll be talking about recurring income all the time, revenue, that's the holy grail of business when you can get subscription, mailbox money, all those things you talk about. I know it's a favorite of yours too, is that, okay, the momentum is not just like things are taking off. It's also like money coming in the door consistently, predictably, sustainably.
Yeah, we love strategies and tactics, and this is what we do every day. Outside of this podcast is we run businesses and we grow businesses and start businesses. So, I mean, you need to also enjoy, you know, tactical things like analytics and email marketing and sales copy and finance, financial stuff and accounting and, all the things that, I mean, we'll talk about all of that because that's also part of the journey. One thing I wanted to bring up too is that one very empowering thing about the growth mindset, or I think the snowball analogy as well, is how it applies to not just one domain, not just business, but it applies everywhere. And that came from me being curious and wandering over into other subjects and being like, okay, I learned about the growth mindset from psychology, and I can definitely see where that applies in business, right? Like that was like an easy connection for me to make. But as you start wandering into other areas, like for example, finance, well, suddenly most of the people talking about like healthy long-term investing basically are saying the same thing. You want to start small and keep growing slowly growing over time, and eventually your investments will snowball they will start to accumulate faster and faster if you start with wherever you can start. Right. And that's a big part of the snowball analogy for me, is a lot of times we don't get started because we're waiting until the snowball is already big. We just want to have a sold out arenas or whatever. But all of those things start with a small step. And it was interesting to me. I kept hearing the same message from all these different domains that didn't intend to say the same thing. They just said, hey, after thousands of years of thinking about money, most money people say, well, you should start small and grow incrementally. That's the best way to do it. That's it. And so they talk about incremental growth, and I'm not super knowledgeable in fitness stuff, but I've heard the same thing there, right? The myth is that you're going to go in, you're going to pump a bunch of iron and you're going to get super ripped. That's a fantasy. The people who actually know what they're doing, they start out with boring small steps, like building up your stabilizer muscles is something I've heard, which is like, it's not sexy. It's not, you don't feel like a badass coming home after the gym. You're just like, oh yeah, I like lifted small weights for a while, but you're building the foundation so that next week. And then, the recovery thing, again, I don't know a lot about this, but I've heard a lot. But it seems to be the same. It's the same concept again. Oh, if you want to do it in an unhealthy way, sure, you can, ruin your body basically. By trying to look cool or whatever. You can do that with money too, right? If you want to look cool for a month, throw all your money into some hot investment and see it spike up and be like, yeah, I'm a genius now. But run that out over 6 years, 20 years, 40 years and see what happens. Whereas run the growth mindset over six years, 20 years, 30 years. I know what's going to happen, keep building the same snowball, growing it and growing it and growing it for 20 years. You know what's going to happen.
There's such a myth in startup business world, and I'm not necessarily talking about Silicon Valley, but is that, showed up and unicorn appeared, just amazing. But truly entrepreneurship and I'm a big skeptic anyway. When I hear those fancy stories, I'm like, what was the real story?
Mm.
It was done in the trenches, day by day, the grind. And I talk about Anna, my partner at thevitabars.com. And the thing from the get-go with her is you never have to worry. She's actually, you do have to worry. She's pushing herself too hard.
Mm.
She's just, for the last year plus, just showed up, done the grind, the incremental work, and now her snowball is going really well. She's going to get the advantage of the downhill slope very soon because of the grind. But that's not said to scare people away, but I love the like parallels to my own experience that you're saying about like fitness and weightlifting. So take the recovery phase. You grind it out for the first couple of years or whatever, and you need recovery.
Mm.
Burnout's a real thing in entrepreneurship, where you get zombies because they're entrepreneurs, because they're just like miserable because they haven't taken recovery time. That was me, and probably still is me, by the way. And it's something, because you find flow in the video game, in the arcade of business. And it's like, why would I go to a beach? I'll just be sitting here thinking about my video game.
Mm.
I get to do the things I love every single day. My job changes every day. In this version of things, it's not one business, it's 6, 7. And it's just fun to me. So but that recovery phase that we'll talk at some point, come back to, huge for the entrepreneur. You've got to have recharge time. And I say that knowing that, but don't practice it very well at all.
Well,
so Brad, I have a question following this up, unless I cut you off, but I have a question for you. So 25-year-old Brad, there's a bunch out here that's going to be listening to this. What would you go back and say to 25-year-old Brad and those who are maybe young or at whatever age and starting their entrepreneur journey? They go, sign me up. I'm ready to start building my snowball. What advice, thoughts, recommendations would you have for them?
Be easy on yourself. Celebrate small wins. Keep learning. Set learning as the goal, not any particular outcome, because that's where I feel like all of the times I got off the path or stopped building any particular snowball was because I compared my results to somebody else. There's always somebody else you can compare your results to. Always. That is a big thing, is when you compare your results to someone else's results without the context of how they got those results, without their journey, then you're just really doing yourself a disservice. So be nice to yourself and follow your curiosity and interest, and keep learning. Just, if you set learning as the goal, you can never lose. So if I would have said, I don't know how to run Facebook ads, I should learn. How do I learn how to do Facebook ads, right? That would have always worked, and that will always work in whatever situation you're in. Learning will always work. You don't know how to do taxes. Well, there's lots of ways to learn to get better, right? And not to say you can instantly become some tax master or whatever, but you can get a little bit better today. And so I think if I could go back to 25-year-old, if I could install that belief system or that value system of that incremental growth, I'm just confident everything works out. And, you could say, well, everything works out anyways, because I had to go through, maybe my cycles were longer, but I have been learning the whole time, and I have gotten artifacts from all of those projects that I've tried that I could see as a failure. They all taught me something that brings me to the person I am today. So yeah, I think that would be the thing that I would add, though, that the reason I would install that belief is not so much to achieve things faster, because that's a fantasy, right? Like, as soon as you achieve things, you can achieve bigger things. That's not real. But what I wish I wouldn't have done is suffered a lot mentally. Been hard on myself. That's why I started with just be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't think I needed to suffer as much as I did. If I could look, now if I see a 25-year-old who's like, I just started my first business, I'd be like, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear all of the cool things you're going to learn over the next 10 years. It's going to be so fun. But back then it was like, why isn't this working? I must be a bad person. I must be, not smart enough. I must not be good enough at business. I'm, not capable of learning these skills, whatever those things were. And that caused a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish it could have been less painful, but it's not obviously it's not the worst thing any human beings ever experienced. But
So I love the stay curious, stay curious and be lucky, be open to like influence luck. And you influence luck by staying curious. It's how I got started on this whole journey. Is I wanted to learn how to tweak the CSS and HTML on my WordPress blog, and it snowballed into something that was awesome. And I rode that for a long time. In this next chapter, when I left the company that I founded, or the company that acquired the company that I founded, after in 2019, I said, okay, I need to be open. I need to chase the things that resonate with me. And there was a couple of things that resonated: entrepreneurs, always; marketing, always; and then mental health. And it took me a while to get there, but I stayed open, curious about things. And what I would tell myself back then is take the number of people you have in your network that really know, like, and trust you, that are the ones that always tell somebody else you should hire Cory, and triple that. Because I'm here today too, not just from staying curious and open and learning, but how many times over the years when I've just told somebody I was going to do this, or they found out I was doing this, because of really good relationships, holding on to those really good key relationships, so much of my success over the years. I mean, several years ago, I was sitting in the White House on a panel, pinching myself going, I'm this little kid from Lone Grove, America. I ended up there because I knew people that were doing good work in the world, and knew people, and ended up there on a panel in the Eisenhower building. And so this was 5-6 years ago. So, pinching myself, and I trace that. If I trace all of this back, I go, it's because I was doing good in the world. I staying open, curious, as walking around learning, trying to do right by people. And that people go, that. And they told people about it, or they helped me in those realms, or they got me to the next point. I was standing on 2008, I was standing on the campus of Google, pinching myself again. It was because partners, because I was introduced by good people that knew them, that said, this is good people right here. And so that's just a very snippet thing, but to go build your relationships, maintain those relationships, and cultivate new ones, because you never know. Stay in touch with people as best you can, do good by them, give more than you get, and the results are just like exponential.
Like a snowball.
Like a snowball. Well, Brad, this has been a fun first conversation. For those of you that want more, start thesnowball.com, go and subscribe, find us on iTunes, and the other podcasting networks will be there. But come back for the next conversations. We're going to be having fun whether you get here or not. But Brad, it's been a good time. Any final thoughts?
No, I think I'm just really excited to see where this goes. It's going to be fun.
All right, everybody, come back, listen again. We'll see you next time.
See ya.